Hello and welcome to another fabulous edition of Meet the Tech Titans, which is of course brought to you by Hutch, and of course our official venue partner is Collabs at Mireka Towers. Now, Meet the Tech Titans, this is season 2 as a matter of fact. We're speaking to individuals who obviously are using tech in their industries. So many different industries obviously have started absorbing tech. So many great industries out there who are very traditional many years ago now see the value of tech that actually fits in their industries. In the past couple of episodes, we've actually spoken to a fair amount of tech titans, speaking of course in their specific industries, from fintech to e-commerce to so many different types of industries, and it certainly worked out really well. Now we're into the tail end of season 2 of Meet the Tech Titans, which is of course brought to you by Hutch. Today on the show we've got another very special guest, somebody I have actually known for a very long time, as a matter of fact, and we've actually gone, I think, close to about maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Michael Sathasivam is actually our guest today. Michael, of course, is the regional head of Koko. It's part of the massive Alibaba Dara's BNPL. So Michael's on the show. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Jack.
How are you?
Very good, very well, my friend.
This could be the first time I'm actually interviewing you.
We're actually doing a formal thing together. The first time ever, I guess.
We'll try and keep it as formal as possible, which is very difficult for the both of us. Yeah. Michael, so let's start things simple at the moment. You're steering South Asia's operation of one of Alibaba's biggest fintech devices out there. It's Koko. If somebody out there, which we know for a fact that a fair amount of individuals out there who have no idea about fintech, how would you introduce yourself to them? What do you do?
Well, I would like to say that I help people consume things easily and at their own repayment models, be it online or offline. What we do is we offer them digital credit or allow them to make fractional payments for whatever they buy anywhere, either online or offline. That's what I do essentially. But if you look at it from a bigger perspective, essentially we're running South Asia's business. We're trying to implement Koko across Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other countries.
Now, you've obviously been in the tech industry from pretty much day one.
Yes.
You've dabbled with so many different sort of technological advances. How did you actually get into this? What makes this more attractive than any other traditional businesses out there for you?
Well, I actually got into it quite by accident. I've actually been in enterprise business or B2B selling for pretty much most of my life.
Right.
Except for one foray when I was actually into D2C, which is direct to consumer.
Right.
This came about quite by accident. I was called in and said, hey, we are a startup, can you help scale? And I enjoyed the opportunity to kind of work with the underbanked,
right,
or the people in the industry who are kind of invisible to the credit system or to the banking system. That's what essentially we do. We take and give credit to people who do not have proper credit patterns and have never been actually approached by banks. So this for me was something which was very interesting, but something which I wanted to do. The challenge was to not just consolidate in Sri Lanka, but also move globally. And for a small Sri Lankan fintech, which was set up in Sri Lanka, I thought scaling it was something I would like to do, and that's where I got in here.
So Koko, which is basically out and about right now, honestly is BNPL. So
Right.
So BNPL out there, for everybody who doesn't really know, is buy now and pay later. That is the mechanism that Koko has actually implemented in Sri Lanka. Now it's extremely popular with Gen Zs and millennials, right? And because clearly not everybody has the disposable income in one go. Not necessarily Gen Zs, even we also don't have disposable incomes in one go. But it has actually become extremely popular in that particular target market, and you've actually focused on that target market.
Correct.
Why is that?
See, Gen Z wants everything fast, wants everything transparent, and wants everything digitally, right? They're most of the time on their mobile phones and essentially consume everything on their mobile phones, right? That's what Koko allows people to do, what BNPL allows people to do. It allows them to actually use and support their lifestyle by actually having a product which actually can pay at their pace, at their terms, and whenever they want to, which is how Koko is. One of the biggest segments in Sri Lanka in which Koko addresses is the 18 to 30 segment. We have all of our customers in that segment. And the patterns in that segment are phenomenal. The repayment patterns are phenomenal, better than most banks.
Really?
People build healthy spending habits. And I'm happy to say that in that age group, or the Gen Z, millennial age group, they are much more creditworthy than some of the bigger,
companies
and banks we see right now. And that's the most interesting part about Koko. It serves that segment very effectively.
So is it popular in Southeast Asia or South Asia only, or is it actually taking off in the West?
Koko, BNPL
Sorry, the reason
itself.
I'm asking you that is because we see the BNPL marketing actually taking off quite a bit in South Asia and not necessarily too much heard in the West.
Right. There are two reasons for that. South Asia is now picking up. South Asia is a market which is underbanked,
right.
Number one. Number two, has no access to credit. Only 5 to 10% of South Asian folks have a credit card. And number three, because of the economic situations in South Asia, it makes it much more interesting or much more viable for South Asians to get onto BNPL. Having said that, the BNPL market globally, Shaq, is right now at $230 billion.
Wow.
Forecasted to grow to $700 billion by 2030. And one of the biggest countries, mind you, which uses BNPL in a more mature form is Australia. Right. 30% of Australians use BNPL. In Europe, it's about 15%, 10 to 15%, thereabouts. One of the latest things, or one of the newest things which came out recently was, I'm sure you're aware of Coachella.
Yes.
All tickets for Coachella were offered on BNPL.
BNPL, that's right.
And that actually, I think, triggered a complete movement. Lots of people are now adopting it and making it more a way of the mature traditional payment methodologies right now.
Now, obviously, we're looking at, you did mention countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan.
Correct.
Now, you also spoke about the credit facilities, and that's one of the reasons that South Asia is actually picking up because of the lack of credit facilities. Yeah.
Correct.
Now, Pakistan is also a country where basically in that particular age market, it's less than 5% that actually hold on to credit cards, right? How did Koko actually break into that market? We'll talk about Sri Lanka later. Pakistan is actually, what can I say? It's actually a case study, isn't it? Especially for Alibaba and BNPL. Absolutely. How did you guys actually break into that? Because that's not very easy to break into.
So we're taking it in two steps.
Right.
We first are going in with a partnership with one of the biggest mobile wallets there, which is called Easy Paisa.
Right.
And we're actually going in there and testing the waters to a certain extent. Koko is an off-platform provider, which means that we can work with any merchant out there. One of the most interesting things about Pakistan is the fact that if you're Sharia compliant, you're very well respected and accepted there.
Right.
And Koko happens to be zero interest. Which means we are 100% Sharia compliant from day one. So we're working with the authorities there, with the Sharia scholars up there in Pakistan. It's a very cultural thing.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we get it right the first time. And so while we pilot one of our other companies' projects out there, Koko is getting ready for a launch in August in Pakistan, 100% Sharia compliant.
Right.
And basically working with Daraz, which happens to be one of our largest partners out there. We are a subsidiary of Daraz. Daraz is well respected in Pakistan. But one thing we're very worried about is how Pakistan will adopt repayments, right? Because like you said, they are not used to a structured way of credit, a structured repayment pattern. There's no recoveries, there's no hard recoveries, there's no credit companies calling them and trying to collect money from them. So in that context, how do we manage in that space is the challenge, but that's what we're keeping to ourselves. We have some tricks up our sleeve, if you to call it that, and we're looking forward to Pakistan. That's going to be a huge market.
Michael, what is the business plan? I mean, there's a level of high risk involved in this, right? because buy now, pay later, obviously you have the scheme that breaks it down into, I think, 3 payments or 4 payments, right? I mean, I'm sure you have got different mechanisms that's going on, but what is the plan? I mean, how are you recovering money? What if they don't pay? What's the process?
There is always the risk of non-payment. So into every single transaction which we do, we have incorporated all our NPLs and our cost of funds, etc. But Shaq, before I took over at Koko, I didn't know what Koko was, right? And as soon as I dove into it and understood the repayment patterns and the psyche of the people paying it, I was blown away. You would be surprised at the number of people in Sri Lanka who actually use BNPL religiously when it comes to salary, when it comes to paydays, when it comes to when they get their bonus, when they have holidays. Eid, for instance, was one of our biggest marketing campaigns.
Right.
Then we have the November, the Dara's 11/11 sales, etc.,
Right.
which happen. But all
Christmas
of these,
must have been quite
Christmas
big.
is huge. Christmas
Right.
is the biggest for us. But if you look at it, people have traditionally been using Koko for gadgets, for fashion, certain elements of lifestyle. But what we plan to do is to try and make it a way of life into the upper middle market of society. Wouldn't you like to pay your kids' school fees in 3 installments?
Hell yeah.
Would you like to?
I wouldn't want to, actually. I wouldn't want to pay at all.
Apart from that.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you like to take a trip to some exotic country and split your airfare by 3 installments or 6 installments, as it were? Clubs, societies, memberships, your vehicle repairs.
Right.
Wouldn't you like to split it in 3? And the best part is that that's what we're getting to. My plan is to scale Koko to a point where everyday items in this country or everyday payments can be now split into 3 without any cost, any worry about fear of default.
So how does the payment work? I mean, for example, you just said you're talking about splitting it into 3 or 4. That's what the banks do with credit cards, right? I mean, they obviously are giving you 6 monthly interest-free installments. But what happens with credit cards is the fact that they block your amount and they start releasing it bit by bit. How do you do it?
That's exactly what we don't do.
Okay.
We offer revolving credit to our consumers. So essentially, we just charge for the first 25% of their payment. We pay the merchant upfront, right then and there. So the merchant has absolutely no risk.
Right.
The merchant encourages spending a lot more. His basket size increases. And then we take the entire risk of the repayment through Koko, through funding it ourselves.
Right.
So we don't depend on any banks in Sri Lanka. We don't depend on any external creditors or debtors for that matter. We essentially manage the entire credit risk and we make sure that the customer pays on time. We are trying to encourage healthy repayment habits.
Okay.
And that's what we do.
So now Koko's actually rolled out in Pakistan, in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and of course I'm sure there are still so many other countries that have been eyed out for it to be rolling out. But what was some of the aha moments that Koko actually had, and you're looking at some of the challenges whilst launching this? Now, for example, you did mention in Pakistan they're very sharia compliant. Correct. But what about Bangladesh? What were the challenges that you're still facing in Sri Lanka with Koko?
Let me just look at Bangladesh first. So Pakistan, I already told you about, very culturally sensitive, very, very merchant-driven, and very closed. Bangladesh, on the other hand, is a huge, huge market. They are waiting for a product like us to come in. I was recently there, and the level of acceptance at every bank level, at the central bank level, there was phenomenal. But what they want is the best rate. They want budget, they want the best possible rate, and they want cash back. They want cash back to you. I'm not sure about how NPLs will be there in Bangladesh because it's frankly a huge country, and finding someone who lives down a particular street is going to be a challenge for us. But then that's some of the things our algorithm fixes when we actually give out the credit in the first place. Sri Lanka is very interesting. Sri Lanka, as you know, has only after COVID, people have actually started adopting digital a lot more.
Right.
And right now you see that the segment in Sri Lanka which uses Koko and also the upcoming segment is very, very tech savvy. And everything they do is on their mobiles. So Koko has become a way of life for these people right now. The Koko crew, as it were, is something which we call our entire army of users. We have quite a bit. I can't say how much right now, but I would say that banks are sitting up and taking notice right now. And what we're seeing right now, that more and more merchants want to be a part of Koko. So right now, it's not a push from our side.
Right.
We're actually seeing merchants pull our services into their basket and offer it free of charge. And there's been a quite interesting wave of marketing which goes on around this, not from our side, but from the merchant side of things.
Right.
And that's the interesting part about it. People are putting their own money into this, building their own campaigns and embedding Koko as the logo in there. So
right.
I think we have made it in that sense in terms of acceptance by Sri Lanka as a whole. What we're doing right now is working with more banks, with the Credit Information Bureau and telcos to actually get third-party data. As you know, all our algorithms work off certain, all our credit decisioning works off certain algorithms as well.
Right.
And for that, you need data points from telcos, from ride-hailing services to food delivery services to repayment. We take all of that information and we can actually build a very serious credit score for you and offer you credit.
So now you're talking about two things that I want to actually touch on, because first of all, let me just touch on that one, because that is something that I've asked every single Titan who's actually been on the show, and everyone actually, funnily enough, has actually mentioned what you did mention, COVID, right? How the entire world was actually reset after COVID, how individuals were pushed to absorb digital when they didn't want to, how lifestyle changed, and how much digital has actually sort of, played in everybody's role. It's like God saying, okay, you guys are too old, right? This is what I need right now. 4 months of, a shock situation, and everybody moves into digital. Every industry sort of moved really fast as far as digital is concerned. You did mention in terms of BNPL, people absorbing because of the COVID situation. How did it work for the BNPL market?
Well, it was actually a godsend for the BNPL market, not just the BNPL market, but one step before, which is the e-commerce market.
Right, yeah.
When was the last time you went to a bank shack? Right now, everything's on your mobile.
That's right.
You onboard on a mobile, you apply for a credit card via mobile. Some banks make you come there just for a signature, but essentially everything else is digital.
And to see your face.
And to see your face and figure out. But the world is moving towards eKYC, towards smart lending, into digital rails. Government payments are now all on digital. If you look at it just this morning, all government payments, all customs payments, all there was something else which came up interestingly
Supreme
today.
Court payments.
Supreme Court payments, that's one.
Right.
Is all digital right now,
yeah.
which means that people are actually moving towards ease of use for you and me.
Yeah.
E-commerce actually led the trend during COVID, obviously, when everything started happening via mobiles and WhatsApp groups.
Right.
That's actually now moved to a more mature stage right now. Along with e-commerce came the advent of BNPL. Hey, we can't afford paying for all of this right now because we don't work, we're working remotely, etc. So what do? That's the advent of BNPLs.
Right.
So BNPL is here to stay. I think it's going to be a more mature form of credit in Sri Lanka per se, because the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the Credit Information Bureau, and most of the banks are now saying, hey, we think we should roll this out to the bigger market out there, not just the 18 to 24-year-olds.
Right.
And this is now going to become a contextual way of life. Credit is going to be a part of it. It's not BNPL solutions are not going to stand alone. They're going to get embedded into your super apps,
right.
into whatever apps you use right now, into God knows, it might even be on Google and things like that soon. But it's good. It's here to stay, and I think it's going to get even more mature as we move forward in the next 5 to 10 years.
You mentioned algorithms many times, right? I mean, obviously there are different algorithms I suppose you use. How much tech actually does go into running BNPL?
Oh, absolutely a lot. When we initially started off, we were a startup and we had very rudimentary kind of credit mechanisms. But now I'm happy to see that we're using AI, we're using machine learning, we're using predictive analytics across everything we do. From the time you download our app, our algorithms start working and the AI engines work in the back end. With 6 easy questions, I can determine how much credit I can give you, Jack.
Right.
And most banks can't do that right now. So that's what makes us stand out. AI plays a part in our customer service in terms of everything we actually do with our customer engagement. We also have repayment nudges. We tell people very subtly, hey, you know what, your payment is coming up and this is what you need to do. We actually do our segmentation based on AI. So you fall into a separate segment and you get a separate credit limit, whereas somebody else who has been using Koko for about 1.5 years would fall into a much higher credit limit. So segmentation, customer service, credit scoring, behavioral analysis, and also your churn management and your repayment management, right? I can actually predict if you would not pay me over the next 2 months or so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can say that.
Wow.
Maybe not you, but then.
Yeah, I won't.
I know where you live.
That's also true. I will. But on that note, when you actually spoke about the amount of AI and algorithm that's actually used in, with this whole marketing of BNPL, where you buy now and you pay later, there's always this concern of overspending at the end of the day also, right? How do you balance convenience and responsibility? I mean, what is Koko actually sort of leading in terms of making sure that consumers don't necessarily fall into this debt trap?
Correct. One thing we do a lot is educate customers from the outset, from the get-go itself. We have lots of training videos and videos saying, hey, this is what you should be doing, manage what you can spend, etc. So that is one element of things. But we also have very subtle features in the back end in which we can actually basically knock off your account if we see that you're overspending. So behavioral analytics allows us to tell you to know whether a person is spending more than his capacity
right,
and his trend over a period of time. And then we can actually subtly nudge you and say, hey, listen, you're going above your limit, or we can actually just give you a cool off period and say you can't buy anything until you kind of make these payments. We also encourage early payments,
right,
which is something which we would like people to learn about. It's not just buy now and pay later, but what if you have excess cash with you and you can actually pay now? So pay now is something we are just about to get into, which is going to just encourage people to pay for what they have right now. Because, Shaq, BNPL is actually the stepping stone for these young people to get into the formalized credit industry, or the formalized loan lending industry, which the banks offer, right? It is actually the stepping stone to that. So we need to be careful, we need to be prudent, we need to make sure that we tell them what it is. And that's what we're doing.
You know, the other thing, of course, Michael, especially this particular age group, right? Building trust in the financial industry isn't easy.
Yes, it is.
And how do you approach this whole trust building with them, especially for the first-time credit users? Because that is who you are actually targeting.
Correct.
18 to 24 are first-time credit users, because that's their first job.
Correct.
That's when they obviously maybe even get their first credit card. How do you sort of approach?
See, I think when it comes to the options, alternates, it's only the banks.
Right.
And the banks, unfortunately, their mechanisms are rigid.
Archaic is more like...
Sorry, I didn't want to upset
your banking
my
partners?
banking customers or partners. But then everything is very regimental about how you approach banking. What we offer our consumers is a lifestyle and also ease of convenience. Be transparent in everything you do. Whatever you buy, your cost is up there and your margins very, very transparent to you. We tell you how many installments it's going to take and how much it's going to cost. 0 interest, 0 convenience fees, 0 handling fees, etc. And we tell you when your next due date is, and we send you reminders. So that actually, the transparency is what actually builds trust for us. And the fact that we give the best deals, our merchants give the best possible deals, and we have a huge merchant ecosystem which supports this lifestyle, as it were. I think all of that combined actually builds trust in that space.
Let's talk about your banking partners and your banking customers now, because since you brought it up. Do you think traditional banks out there are actually your competitors or partners in something like this? I mean, in both digital lending space, what do you think?
Coming from a background where I've sold all my life to banks, I am embracing this. I'm embracing the partnership angle and the collaboration angle with the banks. Why? Because banks have solid infrastructure, multiple branches, and a whole lot of capital.
Right.
Which startups don't have at our disposal.
Right.
Banks also have a lot of data in terms of what people have been doing. You know, have they been repaying their loans on time? Have they taken a credit card from us? Have they, paid on time, etc., etc., etc. Banks have a lot of data. So what I'm trying to do is partner with the banks, use that data, use their deep pockets, and try and work with them to actually bring faster, quicker, and more agile payment and lending mechanisms to the banks. So that's something in the pipeline, Shah.
So this type of working mechanism, BNPL, how will the banks look at it? Because for them, like you said, Koko is actually taking all the risk. Banks hate taking risks.
Correct.
Right? How will they look at it when you take it to
The
them?
thinking is changing. Thinking is changing. More and more banks, especially in South Asia, are actually reaching out to us and saying, hey, we have a whole army of customers below a certain age group and a certain demographic. Can you help us do something for them? And we will take the risk. So there are banks in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, etc., who we are partnering with to come up with so-called white label solution where Koko partners with these guys and takes this to the market. In Sri Lanka as well, we are right now working with a couple of banks, and very soon you'll see a joint go-to-market with 2 or 3 large banks, where we actually do something a little bit more funkier and edgier for their customers, but they back us on it financially.
So let's zoom out for a bit in terms of the tech world. If you're moving into South Asia, do you see any sort of game changers right now in the fintech industry? Mobile wallets, super apps, real-time payments, something that has actually caught your eye?
Sadly, all of these things are pretty must-have, Shaq, at this point in time.
Okay.
And I said this a couple of months ago as well at something I was talking about, at an event I was talking about, but what fintech, right? I mean, do you use any cutting-edge fintech right now based in Sri Lanka, which actually helps you get the job done faster? Maybe ride-hailing services, which are more utility, and food delivery services, which are utility. But from a fintech perspective, what's out there? I sadly can't find anything which is out there challenging those traditional norms. And I think regulatory has a big part to play in this. And sadly, our regulatory engine, our regulatory body needs to keep up with the times and try and advocate and allow things to happen. Until then, the fintech space in this country is not going to see a whole lot of big movements or big change.
Right.
You still do have, however, the people like the Lanka Pays of the world, the UPIs of the world, the Rast in Pakistan, who actually use government rails to encourage digitalization of payments. Lanka Pay, for instance, is now bringing all these elements which we spoke about, customs and all these other things into mainstream payments, right? But it's payments, and more payments. From a fintech perspective, there's a lot to be desired, and I hope that these young fintech companies out there don't do things just for the sake of doing it, but actually come out with some wow moments right now. What else out there? Smart embedded finance is going to be something which is going to be so embedded finance in the sense that you would be able to pay, buy, or consume anything in any other app you would. For instance, in a telco app, a super app which is coming up, you might find a BNPL element of it, or a ride-hailing element of it. What else? Digital identity, we've been speaking about it for the past 15 years. Hopefully it'll come soon. That's
in our
something, in our time, that's something which is an absolute necessity. EKYC, AML, things which have been around for a long time, not really fintech, but we have a lot of fintech companies pursuing them. But what the country needs is a national look and feel for all of this. Instead of keeping it in and allowing the fintechs to do it, I think the government should kind of embrace that.
You know, with the emergence of AI, right? And Michael, our generation is going to die off. right? The generation right now is pretty much born into the internet, born into AI, and they basically can't get anything done without
Without
AI,
it,
right? I mean, everything is basically required. But in terms of the world moving forward, there's this is something what I see. Individuals, I mean, stakeholders in some of the big companies are still from the previous generation, who are still finding it very difficult to understand the requirement that this generation needs and the tools that this generation is sort of absorbing, right? Do you feel that is actually holding back technological advances as a whole? Or are we basically, or do we need something like that to move one step at a time?
I think it's a little bit of both. At this point in time, most corporates and most companies, like you said, do not embrace AI, but it's starting to change.
Yeah.
Lots of companies are hiring Gen Zs and millennials just to sort out their customer UI, UX, user interface and user experience, and also bring certain elements of AI into it. With Koko, we are very fortunate because we have a very young workforce.
Okay.
And most of them embrace machine learning and AI, etc., like it's like in their sleep.
Right.
So this is something which is actually helping us to stand out from pretty much all of those other so-called entities which do not embrace it. But more than the companies, I feel the country needs to kind of encourage it a little bit more. And
You mean from the government
from
perspective?
a government perspective.
Right.
And how can the government encourage it? Not just by saying, hey, go up and start your AI startup, but by relaxing the rules, the regulations, and the showstop, or at least the blocks which one encounters when one wants to set up something like that, for instance. I think that's where the government can step in and say, hey, for instance, the fintech sandbox at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has not been utilized at all. It was set up with a view to encourage fintechs to build more things and connect to the back-end system, which is the central bank's back-end systems, the payment systems, the credit information bureau systems, etc. But if you are a small fintech like Koko, I do not have access to any of these systems. Why? Because I'm not a licensed regulatory licensed holder in this, a license holder in the central bank's framework, and that actually stops me from getting customer data, getting credit information data, and giving much more meaningful credit to my consumers. So I think from a government perspective, there's a lot more the government needs to do. And I'm hoping that they will open it up in the next couple of years at least.
Is it because that they feel that there is a risk in handing out these details, or do you feel that they don't necessarily still understand the fintech world?
That's what it is. I think it's a laggard approach to the whole thing.
Right.
Most of the things they don't, most of the newer things which come out, they do not understand. And when they do not understand, I'm sorry to say this, but they block.
Right.
And I've been at the butt end of many of those potential startups which could have changed the way we bring Forex into this country and do business in this country. Unfortunately, it's all getting suppressed. The economic situation in the country also contributed towards all of this.
Sure.
Over the past couple of years, we've not had the most robust of backends, and our coffers have been quite, empty. So I guess in that sense, what people have been doing have been wait and see kind of approach. But that needs to change rather fast. Port City is a good opportunity for us to encourage people to come and experiment with fintech. But if that falls under the purview of the central bank, then it's going to be slower. It's going to be slower. I said that very subtly, but slower. But yeah, that's where the problem is.
All right, into the final question as far as this particular episode is concerned, with Michael Sathasivam, of course, the regional head of Koko, part of Dara's BNPL, and it's huge. It's definitely big. It's actually taking over little by little. You don't necessarily realize it, but one thing I do see, Michael, is almost every merchant I go to, there is a Koko marketing there. You can pay with Koko, which is a great move. I know you guys also have been very much under the radar in as far as mainstream media is concerned, but it's nice to see that you're approaching merchants not necessarily through media. I mean, you're actually it's a one-on-one conversation, convincing them to come on board. which is pretty good. But where do you actually see BNPL and digital lending in the next 5-10 years?
Like I said, it's going to be a more mature version of BNPL is going to come out. People are going to be looking at BNPL solutions not just at a standalone, like I said, but it's going to be an embedded part of everything we do, from a banking perspective, from an insurance perspective, from a loans and lending perspective. BNPL is going to be a very vital part of everything we do. BNPL is also going to permeate into other areas like travel, into education, into entertainment. Much like Coachella.
Yep.
I'm quite intrigued by that still though. And it is actually going to be prevalent in pretty much all aspects of life going forward. Yeah, I see it growing in leaps and bounds. You were talking about merchants. All of these merchants are very voluntary with it when it comes to us. We don't have to make huge efforts to go and talk to them and convince them to be on Koko. Their basket size increases, their selling patterns increase, etc. when Koko is offered with them. And as a result, we see a lot more people embracing us. So I think it's a very interesting future for us.
That's fabulous. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to identify what the BNPL market is and to see how the young individuals out there who are sort of absorbing it. That's exactly what Koko does, ladies and gentlemen. Buy now, pay later. I'm sure you've heard of Koko. I'm sure you've actually seen the Koko branding in most of the merchants that you actually go to, but you're still thinking twice. What is Koko? What if I can't pay? What's the whole process? Reach out to them and let them know exactly what you're thinking. And there are lots of people out there who can actually advise you. And just like Michael said, this is also the first step, especially for young ones before they move into the real lending of traditional banks out there. Buy now, pay later. Thank you so much for being a part of another fabulous thought leadership edition of Meet the Tech Titans. This is season 2, and a big thank you out to Hutch, who's actually spearheading the podcast series, talking to individuals out there who are making a mark in the tech industry, in whatever the industries they're actually part of, using tech in their industries. We've got another fabulous edition coming up very soon as we're coming to the tail end of season 2 of Meet the Tech Titans, brought to you by Hutch. A big thank you to Collabs, also part of the show, our official venue partner. Till we speak to you next one, have yourself a good day.